The rancher let her stay. "I can't live without a man," said the Apache girl. Best Wild West stories, the frontier world of Kestrel. 9 was not kind. Red dust storms swept across the plains, and the sun beat down with a heat that could melt unprepared metal. Few humans chose to live here, and even fewer thrived. But Caleb Ward, a tall, quiet man with sun-leathered skin and hands calloused from years of work, had made it his home. He had built a ranch on the edge of the wastelands, raising livestock adapted to the harsh world. His animals were strange to outsiders: six-legged sheep, small-winged goats, but Caleb knew them all by name. He lived alone, and he liked it that way. He liked the quiet, the routine, the peace of a life free from unnecessary complications. Caleb's home was a small compound of metal and stone, with a windmill that pumped water into a tank, a greenhouse for the hardy crops he managed, and a barn full of the creatures he had tamed. The nights were cold, but the stars were bright, and he often sat on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching the twin moons rise over the horizon. One evening, as a red storm approached, Caleb noticed a small figure moving along the ridge of the distant hills. He squinted, shading his eyes. It was a girl, human by the look of her, but not dressed like the settlers he had met before. Her clothing was simple yet intricate, made of soft leathers and cloth stitched in geometric patterns. Apache symbol was painted lightly across her shoulder. Curious and cautious, Caleb grabbed his coat and walked down the ridge to meet her. The wind howled, but the girl did not stumble. She walked steadily, her eyes fixed on the ground, as if she knew exactly where she was going. "Hey," Caleb called, his voice low but firm. "You shouldn't be out here alone. The storm's coming." The girl paused. She looked up at him, and for a moment, Caleb saw something in her eyes that made him hesitate. There was fear, yes, but also strength, something ancient and unwavering. "I'm not afraid," she said. Her voice was soft, almost musical, but carried a weight that surprised him. "Then why are you out here?" Caleb asked, stepping closer. "You could die in this storm." I need to stay," she said simply. Caleb frowned. "Stay? Stay where?" "With you." Caleb blinked. "With me? You barely know me. And it's dangerous out here." The girl looked down, her hands twisting in front of her. She hesitated, then said something that made Caleb freeze. "I can't live without a man." Caleb stared at her. He wasn't sure if she meant what he thought. Most humans had left emotional attachments behind when they colonized the stars. Survival came first, companionship second. But this girl, this Apache girl, said it so plainly, so earnestly, that it stopped him. "You mean protection?" he asked carefully. She shook her head. "No, I mean someone who stays. Someone who does not leave when it is hard. Someone who is steady. Someone who is constant." Caleb took a deep breath. This was not something he had expected when he first saw her. Most people on Kestrel 9 were traders or settlers passing through. They wanted work, food, maybe shelter for the night. They didn't talk like this. "All right," he said finally. "You can stay. For tonight. Just tonight." She nodded and stepped forward. Caleb noticed that she moved with grace, almost like she belonged to the land itself. Even in the strong wind, she held herself upright, her gaze forward, unflinching. As they walked back to the ranch, Caleb noticed the storm growing stronger. Dust whipped around them, and the red sky darkened. The girl did not complain, did not stumble, and she did not look back. When they reached the small house, Caleb led her inside. It was modest, with a table, chairs, a stove, and a few shelves of supplies. He lit the fire, and the warmth spread quickly across the room. "Sit," he said. She obeyed without question. He handed her a bowl of food he had prepared for himself, and she ate slowly, carefully. Caleb watched her. "You're not from around here," he said. She shook her head. "No, I am from far away. My people are scattered now. We travel the stars, but we do not belong anywhere." "And now you want to stay here?" Caleb asked. "For a time," she said, "until I can learn how to survive on my own." Caleb nodded slowly. He understood that look in her eyes. He had seen it in travelers who had lost everything and everyone. But this girl was different. She seemed older than her years, in a way that made him think she had already lived a life far beyond her age. "You can sleep in the guest room," he said. "It's warm. The storm will be worse tonight." She smiled faintly. "Thank you." The night grew darker, and the wind rattled the walls. Caleb sat by the fire, staring at the girl as she unpacked a small bag of belongings. She had very little. A few clothes, a small tool for cutting herbs, and a carved pendant that glowed faintly in the firelight. He wondered what it meant. After a long silence, she looked at him and spoke again. "Your people, humans, you are stronger than the galaxy thinks." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Stronger?" "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your kind survives where others fail. You endure storms, hunger, cold. You build when others abandon, and you stay when others leave. Caleb did not answer. He had heard this before, in stories, in old legends about humanity, but hearing it from her, here, now, made it feel real. I don't know if I can stay here, she added quietly. I don't know if I can survive, alone, but I feel safer with you. Caleb thought about that. He had lived alone for many years, and he liked it. But there was something about this girl's presence that did not feel like an intrusion. It felt natural. The fire crackled, and outside, the storm raged. But inside, the room was calm. Caleb realized that the storm could not touch them here, not tonight. Hours passed. The girl finally lay down to sleep, pulling a blanket close around her. Caleb watched her for a moment, then returned to his chair by the fire. He sipped his coffee, thinking about what had just happened. This was unusual. Humans were not supposed to bond like this. They were supposed to survive first, emotions second. But perhaps the galaxy had underestimated them. Perhaps it had not understood the quiet power of humans who stayed. Outside, the wind howled, dust swirling in great red clouds. The stars shone above, cold and distant. Inside, a man and a girl shared warmth, shelter, and a moment of trust. Caleb did not know how long she would stay. He did not know what the future held. But for now, he let her be. He let her stay. And as he looked at her sleeping form, he thought, one thought clearly, the galaxy will notice. And when it does, it may not know what hit it. He did not realize that a pair of distant alien survey drones had already detected the anomaly. A human and an Apache girl, together surviving a storm that should have ended them. Somewhere, far away, the galaxy began to take note. And Caleb's quiet, ordinary life had just become the first chapter in something much larger. The night stretched on. The fire burned low, and outside, the storm waited to test them. But inside, humans endured. The storm finally passed, leaving the red plains of Kestrel, 9 quiet and strange. Dust swirled slowly in the morning sunlight, painting the world in a soft orange haze. Caleb stepped outside, stretching his stiff muscles from sleeping in a chair by the fire. The ranch looked the same, as it always had, except for one new presence, Atza. She stood near the barn, watching the small winged goats as they nuzzled each other in the morning chill. The sun highlighted the intricate designs painted across her shoulder, the marks of her people. Her eyes followed every movement of the animals, and she moved her hands lightly, as if understanding the rhythm of life itself. Caleb approached slowly. "Morning," he said. "Did you sleep well?" Atza looked up, her dark eyes calm. "Better than I have in a long time. Your fire, it kept me safe. It was more than warmth. It was steady." Caleb nodded. He wasn't used to compliments, especially ones like this. Humans on frontier worlds usually survived on their own, relying on no one but themselves. But this girl, this stranger, was speaking about something deeper. "You learn fast," Caleb said, changing the subject. "Do you know how to care for livestock?" Atza smiled faintly. "I can learn." Over the next few days, she watched him closely. She followed him through the tasks of ranch life, asking questions, trying to understand every detail. She helped repair fences, feed the animals, and even observed Caleb tending the greenhouse where he grew small crops that survived the harsh weather. At first, Caleb was skeptical. "You don't know how to handle a storm. You don't know the land," he said. "You'll get hurt if you try too much." Atza shook her head. "I can watch. I can learn, and I can stay." Caleb realized that she wasn't asking for protection. She was asking to understand the rhythm of life, to belong without being controlled. He began to teach her the ways of the ranch, the subtle cues of the animals, the way the wind would signal a coming dust storm, how to ration water, how to repair tools. It was slow work, but she absorbed every lesson. She did not rush, nor did she complain, and soon, Caleb noticed that she began anticipating his actions. She would feed the goats before he reached the barn, water the crops just as he was about to start, and adjust the fences in ways that made the animals calmer. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together on the porch. The twin moons rose slowly, casting pale light over the red plains. Atza leaned back, her face relaxed for the first time since arriving. "Humans, you are different," she said quietly. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Different how? You endure, you stay, even when it is hard, even when no one watches. You do not leave," Caleb frowned. "That is what survival is. You adapt, you endure, you keep going. Anyone can do that." "Not anyone," Atza said firmly. "Most species, they survive only for themselves. They endure only because they must. But you, You endure because you choose to. You choose to stay with your world, your people, or with someone else. And that is rare. Caleb looked at her, surprised by her insight. He had always thought of humans as ordinary survivors, clever and stubborn, yes, but nothing extraordinary. Yet here was a girl from a faraway people, seeing something in him he had never thought about himself. As the days passed, Caleb noticed another change. Atza was healing, not just physically, but mentally. She had arrived thin, exhausted, her posture tense from years of travel. Now she moved with confidence. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, her voice grew stronger, and she laughed more easily, especially when the animals did something unexpected. One afternoon, while repairing the greenhouse roof, she slipped slightly on the metal edge. Caleb reached out instinctively, but she caught herself, steadying without help. "I can do this," she said, smiling. "You could," Caleb replied. "I didn't doubt it. No, but I needed to try. I needed to know I could stay, even when no one held me." It was then that Caleb realized the truth. The Apache girl did not need a man for protection. She needed a constant presence, someone who stayed, who shared the burden of life, who allowed her to grow without fear. Humans, he realized, were naturally capable of this. It was something the galaxy did not understand. Unseen, far above Kestrel, 9 alien survey drones hovered in orbit. The drones had marked Caleb's ranch as unusual the night Atza arrived. Their sensors had detected the girl's physiology stabilizing in ways that defied prior observations. Even genetically altered humans from other worlds had never produced such biological resilience through companionship alone. The drone's monitors displayed graphs, readings, and simulations. Analysts from across the galaxy debated what they saw. "It is only one case," they argued. "It cannot represent an entire species." But another voice, older, more cautious, replied, "It is not about strength or technology. It is about constancy. Humans endure not because they are stronger individually, but because they anchor each other. They do not leave, they do not abandon, and it is creating stability we have never recorded before." Back on the ranch, Caleb and Atza continued their work, unaware of the attention they were drawing. One morning, she spoke as they repaired a fence along the northern ridge. "Your people, you are underestimated," she said. "I suppose we are," Caleb admitted. "The galaxy likes to see humans as ordinary. Nothing special. Just survivors. But survival alone is not what makes you special," Atza said, tightening a fence post. "It is the choice to endure with others, to stay, to build, even when it is hard." Caleb paused, considering her words. He had always thought of himself as stubborn, maybe lucky, maybe clever, but the girl's insight revealed something deeper. Humans were not just surviving, they were anchoring existence itself. Days later, Atza began contributing ideas of her own. She suggested rearranging the watering system to conserve energy during dust storms. She noted which plants thrived under certain sunlight angles and which livestock preferred shade. Her observations were not just helpful, they were innovative. Caleb watched her work, quietly impressed. "You're learning fast," he said. "I am learning from you," she replied. "But humans, you teach more than skills. You teach steadiness. You teach patience. You teach being constant. That is something my people have almost forgotten." That night, they sat again on the porch, watching the twin moons rise. Atza held a small cup of hot water in her hands. She looked at Caleb and smiled. "You are different than I expected," she said softly. "I thought I needed a man to survive. I thought someone would save me, but I see now. I needed someone to stay. Someone who does not run. Someone who endures quietly. That is you." Caleb did not answer immediately. He had never considered himself remarkable. Yet her words touched something deep inside him. A realization that human endurance was more than stubbornness. It was a power the galaxy had ignored. Outside, the survey drones adjusted their orbit, recording everything. Analysts continued to debate. If this spreads, if more humans anchor each other like this, the galaxy will need to reconsider their assumptions. Inside, Caleb and Atza shared a simple meal. The fire warmed them, the wind had died down, and for the first time, Caleb felt a connection beyond survival, not ownership, not obligation, just presence. He realized the girl was not weak. She was strong, yes, but in a way that humans could amplify. Their strength together created a new kind of stability, quiet, enduring, impossible to ignore. And somewhere, far away, the galaxy began to take notice. The twin moons of Kestrel 9 rose high over the red plains, casting a pale glow across the ranch. Inside the barn, Caleb moved slowly, checking on the small winged goats. The animals were restless after the recent storm, shifting their weight and snuffling the dust-covered floor. Atza followed him, her eyes sharp, her movements careful. "I think they are hungry," she said, stepping forward to mix feed with precision. "They are nervous from the storm, it changes their rhythm." Caleb nodded. "You've learned their ways faster than I expected." Atsa shrugged. "I am learning from someone who does not leave, someone who stays." Caleb paused, considering her words. The galaxy often called humans ordinary. Survivors, stubborn, adaptable, but ordinary. And yet, here was Atsa, observing him, noting not only his skills but his constancy. She had said it before, but now Caleb felt it in himself. Humans did not just survive because they could fight or adapt. They endured because they chose to stay, even in isolation, even when no one was watching. High above, the alien survey drones adjusted their position. The readings from the ranch were still unusual. The girl's physiology, once unstable from her long journey, had stabilized completely. The scientists monitoring the drones were astonished. One said, "Her recovery is impossible by known standards. We expected her body to deteriorate without advanced care." Another replied, "It is not advanced care. It is human presence. She thrives because she has a human constant. We have never seen this in any other species." The ranch seemed ordinary from orbit, just a man, a girl, and some livestock. But the data told a different story. Humanity's strength was subtle, quiet, and yet undeniable. Back on the ranch, Atsa and Caleb finished tending the animals and moved to the greenhouse. She pointed to a row of crops and asked, "Why are some plants stronger than others?" Caleb looked closely. "Some get more sunlight, some more water, some soil is richer. But mostly, it is care, consistency, attention every day. That is what matters." Atsa nodded. "So humans, you succeed not because of power, but because you stay and care. You endure for the sake of others, not just yourself." Caleb smiled faintly. "You understand it quickly." "I understand because I see it," she said. "And it is rare. Most species do not endure for others. Humans, you anchor the world. You anchor people." The thought struck Caleb. Humans were underestimated. The galaxy feared strength that roared or conquered, but humans were quiet anchors. Their true power was not weapons or technology. It was persistence, reliability, and the ability to create stability wherever they went. The next day, the drones were closer than usual. Small lights blinked faintly in the sky, and strange signals reached the ranch. Caleb noticed them while repairing a fence. "Do you see that?" he asked Atsa, pointing to the distant flickers in the sky. She squinted. "They are watching. Aliens. They want to know what we are doing." Caleb nodded slowly. "Let them watch. They will learn soon enough." For the next week, life continued much the same. Atsa learned to feed the animals efficiently, repair equipment, and anticipate Caleb's needs. She also began sharing her own ideas: how to conserve water, how to plant crops in patterns that caught more sunlight, and how to calm the animals during storms. The subtle power of humans became clearer. Caleb did not command, he guided. He did not dominate, he endured. And through his presence, Atsa thrived. One morning, a faint hum sounded in the sky. Caleb and Atsa stopped their work and looked up. The drones had landed on a nearby ridge, cloaked in technology that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. "They want to meet us," Atsa said. Caleb studied them carefully. The aliens were not aggressive, at least not visibly. They had limbs shaped for balance, heads large for thinking, and eyes that scanned everything. Their language was complex, full of tones humans could barely perceive. The lead alien spoke first, through a translation device. Human Caleb Ward. Apache subject Atsa. "We have observed your life. Your methods are unusual." Caleb nodded. "Unusual how?" "You endure. You survive. You thrive. Not because of technology, not because of aggression, not because of dominance, but because you anchor each other. Your presence stabilizes the body and mind of another being. This is unknown, unrecorded, impossible by our previous models." Atsa stepped forward. "It is simple. He does not leave. He stays. And I stay. That is all." The aliens exchanged glances, struggling to understand. One said, "This is not control. This is not ownership. It is presence, constancy." "Yes," Caleb said quietly. "It is. Humans endure for others, not because they must, but because they choose to. We do not leave. We do not abandon. And that choice is powerful." The aliens took readings of the ranch again. Every animal, every plant, every breath of wind measured slightly differently. Atsa's body, once fragile from travel, now glowed with stability in their scanners. "It cannot be explained," one alien admitted. "They do not need advanced medicine or technology. The girl, she thrives simply because he stays. That is unprecedented. Atza looked at Caleb. Your people, humans, you are stronger than the galaxy knows. You are anchors. You endure quietly, and through endurance, you change the world. Caleb felt a strange pride, one he had never allowed himself to feel. Humans were not powerful like the military fleets or the ancient star machines of the galaxy. Their power was quieter, subtle, unseen, and yet it reached farther than any laser or shield ever could. The aliens' devices blinked, recording the patterns. Their council would need to reconsider the humans entirely. The galaxy had underestimated them, not because they were weak, but because their strength was different. For the first time, Caleb and Atza realized the truth. They were not just surviving on Kestrel 9. They were changing the rules of survival itself. That night, they sat again on the porch. Atza's hair glowed silver under the moonlight. Caleb poured hot water into 2 mugs. They are afraid, Atza said softly. They do not understand humans. They see only strength as force. They do not see what we do. They will, Caleb replied. Eventually, if they keep watching. Humans endure, she said, smiling faintly. Not because we fight, not because we command. We endure because we stay, and because we stay, we create strength. Caleb nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He looked at the horizon, at the red plains stretching endlessly. The world was harsh, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Yet here, on the edge of nowhere, a simple truth shone brighter than the twin moons. Humans endured, humans stayed, and humans anchored life itself. Outside, the alien drones remained in orbit, silent observers of a phenomenon they could not fully explain. They recorded the ranch, the animals, the crops, and the humans. The galaxy would notice soon. Perhaps it would fear, perhaps it would admire. But one thing was certain. The quiet power of humans could not be ignored. Atza rested her head on her knees. I understand now, she whispered. I needed a human who stayed, and I needed to learn what it meant to endure, to anchor, to be constant. That is you. Caleb looked at her, at the firelight flickering across her face, and finally said, Then you have learned well, and you are strong, not because I stayed, but because you chose to stay too. A sense of calm passed between them. Outside, the world was wild, the galaxy was vast and unknown. But for now, the two of them, human and Apache, endured together. And their quiet strength, unnoticed by most, had already begun to reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to survive. Months passed on Kestrel 9. The red plains stretched endlessly under the twin suns, but life at Caleb's ranch had become routine in the best way. The small winged goats had grown strong, the crops flourished under careful tending, and the barn was neat and orderly. Atza had learned much, not only the practical skills of the ranch, but also the subtle strength humans carried, the ability to endure, to stay, to anchor life itself. Caleb often watched her as she moved about the ranch. Her confidence had grown, and she carried herself with a quiet grace that spoke of both resilience and wisdom. She was no longer the exhausted, uncertain girl who had arrived months ago. Now she was a partner in every sense of the word, sharing work, decisions, and the steady rhythm of life. The alien drones still hovered in the skies above Kestrel 9, their sensors recording every movement. They no longer simply watched, they analyzed, debated, and transmitted reports back to councils across the galaxy. The readings from the ranch were now regarded as anomaly-level data, a human experiment of endurance and constancy unlike anything seen before. Far away in a council chamber aboard a massive orbital station, alien representatives argued. It is not technology, one said. It is not force. Their strength comes from presence, from staying. Another shook its head. Impossible. How can a species wield power by simply existing beside another? By simply enduring? A third, older alien spoke quietly. It is not impossible, it is humanity. Back on the ranch, Caleb and Atza continued their daily routine. They rose with the sun, fed the animals, tended the greenhouse, and repaired fences. Life was simple, but simplicity had power. Every day, they endured together, creating a stability that was almost magical in its quiet effectiveness. One evening, as the twin moons rose again, Atza spoke while sitting on the porch, looking out at the plains. I have learned something important, she said. Humans, you are underestimated everywhere, but it is not because you are weak. It is because the galaxy cannot see your strength. It does not understand endurance, constancy, or the power of presence. Caleb leaned back in his chair. Perhaps, but we do not endure for recognition. We endure because it is what life requires, because we choose to. Atsa smiled. And through your choice, others thrive. Not just me, the animals, the land, even the galaxy, in its own way, begins to notice. As she spoke, the faint hum of the drones grew louder. For the first time, Caleb realized the aliens were approaching not to threaten, but to observe with understanding. Their presence had become routine, and the ranch was now known across the stars as a place of human constancy. A week later, an official delegation of aliens arrived at the ranch. They did not carry weapons or wear intimidating armor. Instead, their movements were careful, respectful. They studied Caleb and Atsa, the animals, and the thriving crops, taking notes and scanning everything with quiet efficiency. The lead alien, a tall figure with reflective blue skin, spoke through a translator. Human Caleb Ward. Apache Atsa, we have studied your life here. Your methods are unique. Your endurance, your presence, your constancy, these are forces we have never recorded. You do not dominate. You do not conquer. Yet your influence extends beyond what we understand. Caleb nodded. We live. We endure. That is all. Atsa added. And we thrive. Together. Humans endure not for themselves alone, but for others. That is our strength. The aliens paused, scanning and analyzing again. Your strength, it is not measurable by conventional standards, yet it shapes the world around you. It stabilizes. It anchors. We must reconsider our assumptions about humans. Caleb looked at Atsa. It is simple. We stay. We endure. And through that, life continues. The delegation left shortly after, transmitting their findings across the galaxy. The reports would spread, causing debate, study, and perhaps even admiration. Humans, long underestimated, were now recognized for a power that did not roar but endured quietly. Days turned into weeks. News of human endurance began to spread, carried by travelers, scouts, and eventually starships. Frontier worlds adopted new policies. Humans were invited not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as anchors. Settlers, guides, and partners sought out humans, realizing that a human's presence alone could stabilize new worlds, heal struggling communities, and even restore hope in desperate situations. On Kestrel 9, Caleb and Atsa continued their life. The stormy nights still came, the harsh sun still beat down, but the ranch flourished. Animals were healthy, crops strong, and the land seemed more alive than ever before. Atsa had become a teacher in her own right, sharing knowledge with visitors who occasionally came to learn from the humans who had endured in the harshest conditions. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise, Atsa spoke softly. You have taught me more than survival. You have taught me what it means to endure, to anchor, to be constant. Humans, your quiet strength changes everything. Caleb smiled. You have learned well, and you are strong too, not because I stayed, but because you chose to stay with me. Together, we endure. The stars above twinkled, distant and cold, but something had shifted. The galaxy, vast and unknowable, had begun to notice the subtle, quiet power of humans. Not as conquerors, not as warriors, but as constants, anchors, and enduring presences in a chaotic universe. A few months later, news arrived from neighboring systems. Worlds once struggling to stabilize had adopted human-led settlements. Colonies flourished wherever humans chose to stay. The galaxy's understanding of survival had changed. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were pillars of stability. Their endurance now a model for civilizations across the stars. Caleb and Atsa continued their life on the ranch, unnoticed by most, yet quietly shaping the future. They did not seek recognition. They did not fight for fame or glory. They endured. They stayed. They anchored life. One evening, as the wind whispered across the plains and the twin moons rose again, Caleb spoke quietly to Atsa. Do you see? We did not conquer. We did not dominate. We only stayed. And yet, everything changes. Atsa rested her head on his shoulder. Yes, and the galaxy will remember. Humans endure. Humans anchor. And the quiet power of presence is stronger than any weapon. The wind continued to blow. The red plains stretched endlessly. And on the edge of nowhere, a human rancher and an Apache girl looked at the stars, knowing that their simple choice to stay had already reshaped the galaxy. And somewhere in the vastness of space, civilizations began to understand a truth that humans had always known. Strength was not always measured in force, speed, or firepower. Strength was measured in endurance. Strength was measured in constancy. Strength was measured in the quiet, steady act of staying, even when it is hard, even when no one is watching. Caleb took a deep breath. He looked at the twin moons, at the red plains, at the girl beside him. We did not need to fight, he said softly. We just needed to stay. Atsa smiled, her eyes reflecting the moon's. And through staying, we change everything. The galaxy, vast and chaotic, began to learn it too.